Welcome back, dear audience. Hope you're doing good. As always, cheers. As always, I'm drinking my coffee today, not tea. I'm bringing some discipline back into my life. I used to be super disciplined, but I didn't like it. Now I'm going back into discipline, but I love it. That's a big difference. To bring the discipline in your life, little by little, at the pace that you enjoy, that is not forced. Does that make sense? It's different because when you are bringing discipline kind of in a forced way, how long are you going to run this? Yeah, you can do this, but it's always fighting with yourself. That's not real discipline, because you always need willpower to um, where the willpower doesn't belong and things like that. Because as always, there is a way to bring anything into your life the right way, not forced, including discipline. You know, one by one. You don't spring too much onto yourself. Because I had like really good habits and good discipline, but I was not enjoying it. Not to say that discipline is bad. It's just that I was not enjoying it. It was built in the wrong way, not through the motivational mechanism that is healthy. Does that make sense? So now I'm building discipline through the motivational mechanism that it is healthy. Little by little, adding something, and through the enjoyment. I'm making sure that the energy is going well. I'm making sure that I'm enjoying that thing that is needs to be done. I even started doing my metabolic diet where I eat 5 days a week. I eat low carbs, right? Or sometimes if I don't have an appetite, I don't eat at all. Some people do like intermittent fasting. That thing happens to me naturally. I just check, am I hungry? And it's like, no, not hungry. And so I could go the entire day with no eating, even do the workout, and everything is fine. You know, no crashing energy. My body's not asking for anything. So I'm just running with that. So there's the intermittent fasting happens to me naturally. Why does it happen to me naturally? Because all the cravings that arise at the emotional level, I alchemize it. Therefore, whatever is left is the natural need of my body for sustenance, nothing extra, right? So my body is eating, not my emotions. You see, none of it works. Discipline does not work without the alchemy. Without consciousness calibration, none of it is real. Everything is forced, everything is brute force together, and nothing is elegant, stuff like that. This is. So, you see, you cannot go there from where you are. You cannot. They'll say, okay, like, oh, 7 habits of highly successful people. So, okay, now I have to do those 7 habits. It's like, no, these 7 habits arise from you being calibrated, and these habits arise from you being calibrated, not a belief system being installed. What I'm saying here is quite simple. It's dump all the belief systems. That will allow you to face all the crap that is there, that has been covered by all these belief systems. And as you alchemize within yourself, you start seeing this like, oh my God, everybody's going backwards. So at first, when I started seeing that, like I used to go backwards, not all the time, but on some things I was going backwards. Like forced discipline. That's a type of backwards ass motion, which is just makes you frustrated in the end and not happy with life. On superficial level, you may seem like successful because like, hey, look at you, you got everything together, you know. It's like, yeah, but you're fighting with yourself every day that you don't got nothing together. Everything is brute force, right? So not interested in that. And once I discovered that it's possible to calibrate consciousness, and that is the foundation of everything else, then everything else, you know what? I had to almost relearn everything that I used to learn. Everything that I used to know. Some skills even. Because even, for example, the gym, to do the exercise through that habit of forcing, getting to like doing, 3 times 12 and all that nonsense, right? That conditioning. Everything has to be undone. So even the way you exercise has to be completely relearned. And so I'm relearning it, and I'm taking it easy, I'm taking it slow, I'm making sure that the energy is first, that that the energy of movement, which is enjoyment itself, is there, and I'm not crossing it, basically, unless there is this enjoyment, I'm not crossing it. Because if I force it and my enjoyment or my energy cannot catch up with what I'm trying to do, because that's ego, like you're forcing it, then no, right? And that's usually just like you may have like a bit of results for quite some time, and then like crashes in, and then again, what I'm trying to say? It's just like people trying to lose weight. They diet for a month, they lose the weight, and then back on eating, and they just blow up back again. Why? The same thing with muscles. There's some people like, working out, like roiding up, getting the muscles, and then you see them in another, context, and they're back again. So what the fuck was that all about, This is not part of your life. Was just like some forceful event. Now, I understand if you're competing, of course, you're going to have to peak at the competition. But the rest of your life is supposed to be integrated with the sport. It's not supposed to be a hassle. It's not supposed to be that something's forced. You see? So even like this idea of going to the gym, there might be like, there's like a lot of anxiety. Okay, that's the one to work with. Okay? Place your attention on anxiety. So like, maybe I can drive by the gym, and make a little step. It's like, yeah, I drove by the gym. Maybe next time I can go into the gym and maybe do some little cardio on the bike, Maybe next time I can go and do some weights. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, but you move at that pace of what you're capable of facing. And this way, the progress is enjoyable. It is slower than the ego-based progress, but it's very steady, and it's something that you get to keep, and you have no crashes. Okay? It's something different. It's something magical. I'm starting to see it. People say like, the obstacle is the way. You got to be very careful with this advice, because there is an obstacle where it's the way, but all the other ones are just dead ends. And if you break one wall, it's going to be another one. Break another wall is never ending wall breaking. And then eventually you're going to get exhausted, because it's just pure wall breaking with no reward. You see, like it's in a labyrinth. You may reach the dead end and try to break that wall and to get out of the labyrinth again. And as soon as you break it out, you pop into another labyrinth, right? So that's not real. It's not the one obstacle to overcome. So the obstacle is the way, but the right obstacle is the way. The right obstacle. If you find the right obstacle and say, recognize it, like, this is the right obstacle. This is something that I have to face. This is something that I have to overcome. And, generally speaking, it's those incoherent feelings is really the obstacle. And see what I'm trying to say. So in martial arts, for example, the body moves, it has this biomechanical movements. The most efficient and the most powerful move, if you notice, is in elliptical and toroidal. It is not straight or direct. And even like in the judo or jiu-jitsu, you always find that there is a weakness in one particular angle of motion. It doesn't matter how strong is the muscle, but if you're attacking the weak point of the biomechanics of the musculoskeletal structure, you don't need a lot of force, and you will be able to move the body where it is weak at that particular angle. It doesn't matter. You see what I'm trying to say? That's what jiu-jitsu and judo is using. It's using the leverage against the force. And that requires the intelligence. It requires elegance. That's why it's called the gentle way. Because it's not moving where there is the most resistance. It is finding where it is correct obstacle. Like if you break through this, then you're gonna use a little bit of force, and then you have like a huge leverage, right? So you are finding where to attack in what particular motion. The same thing in life. You may go like and say, oh, I need this, and then there's a huge wall, and so okay, so now I'm gonna have to chip on this wall, but maybe there's another way. Maybe that's not the obstacle. So yeah, huge lesson to learn. So that brings me to there's two things that I want to talk about today. One is open-minded skepticism, which relates to what I'm talking about, and the types of dreams of the mind, the layers of the mind. Both of these you can observe by yourself. This is why, like the model of consciousness is already within you. Okay? Don't go by any external model of consciousness unless you can verify yourself. Does that make sense? There's a universal model of consciousness, which is, why is it universal? Because it's using geometry and electromagnetics, and it's just the way the physics works. And physics is actually just a microcosm of metaphysics. It's not something different or invented. All the different phenomena that you see in physics, you also see in metaphysics, which is your consciousness. Right? So the way things are in physics, giving you clues of how the consciousness works. And electromagnetism is it is a great universal model to understand how the energy moves within your consciousness, for example. Okay, now open-minded skepticism. What does it mean? Well, if you're too open-minded, then you're going to take a belief and believe it as it's true, right? And you would be like listening is like, oh wow, it is so, isn't it? And somebody could be lying to you, you see? Somebody could have the belief that it's just not real. Or even they could have a belief which is like a placebo, and it only works in the matrix. As long as there's a subscription to that to be true, it works. Meaning that as long as everybody in that reality is going backwards, it works. Does that make sense? It does not even mean that it is right. Something may be working. Like, for example, like dark magic, right? If you are in a place where people have no high level of intelligence and awareness and have no capacity to calibrate the consciousness, you and everybody lives in fear, you can definitely do some dark magic and it will work, because people are subscribing to this idea of fear, or they live in that type of vibration, right? So you can be a type of, um, I'm trying to say, the king of the sewers or the queen of the sewers. That's what these witches and warlocks are, right? But as soon as they enter the realm of true divinity, nothing works. And there's a realization that not only that it doesn't work, it is not even right. Right? And so they need people who live in that that fear-based vibration for it to work. And if people don't, it does not work. That's just the way it is. And like, how does it work, like in your life, for example? Well, you may be, um, interacting with them, and you may meet the people, and you will meet the witches, and you meet the warlocks who they think that they got away with the trick, and that's their little trick and their little power of how they can manipulate the reality. And they may be projecting their little fucking shit, their little reality, like, onto you. But if any, you may even feel that this, like, comes as a challenge, like a chemical challenge. But if you alchemize that, or you already have alchemized that, then the reality that you are in and the reality that you're generating in your reality, that shit don't work. And they have no authority, no power at all. In fact, everything comes back to them. That's the truth. Like, if anybody would try to mess with anybody who is the true alchemist, or I want to say alchemist, I don't mean just the male, but the people who are calibrating their consciousness and are capable of dealing with darkness and maintaining their vibration through observing disorder and right, like that negativity, that disorder turning into coherence. If that's the case, none of that works, right? And the more of this coherent, which is holistic type of environment, the less power they have. And that's the thing. There's more and more of that coherence right now, and less of these tricks work. There's less and less people who live in the fear, and more people calibrating their consciousness. Less and less all of these tricks work. So all the witches and all the warlocks are just having their ass handed to them, and totally brutal collapse of their identity and all this stuff. So resistance is futile. This is what I'm trying to say. And all of this pride in being a witch, all of this pride being a warlock or whatever, you always been just the king and the queen of the sewers. You've never been anybody of value, right? And you just contributed to the disaster and disorder. And what is it, just like this other people watching you and validating you, that you think that you, again, anyway. And their days are numbered. And I know for a fact that people who live life like this, through this type of manipulative magic, are breaking down. Okay? So, open-minded. If you're open-minded and start believing in this, just holes in your consciousness, you're just going to start, creating something that is not true. Now, it's very important because it's a feminine thing, open-minded. Why is it important? Because if you open your mind, and this usually happens with women, not all the time, with men can happen too, but then what I'm saying is that most of the time, usually it's like 80-20 principle applies. So you have this believing that the world is so, or that's how the way it works, right? And so as long as the woman believes to be the case, she is creating that. She's being a used as a mirror to reflect that crap, that bullshit that is being created by the warlock. So that's pretty much like the witch is just creating the best possible conditions for the intent of the warlock, like if you like, right? It doesn't see what I'm trying to say. A witch in one side of the world could be working with the warlock on another side of the world and not even realizing. But there's some has to be some masculine, corrupt masculine, corrupt feminine for that thing to work. Okay, so that's the thing. That's the thing about open-mindedness. Because if you're open to something that is corrupt, you are breeding that. That's the problem with empaths and narcissists, right? And even if you are watching and obsessed about the way the narcissists work, you are still doing it. Your attention is still there. You're still creating that thing. You're still believing in that thing. That's what you're doing. You see, this is why I'm so strict about this, and I'm basically cutting off where the corruption bleeds. I don't give a shit whether people like it or not. I'm just here to do what's right and the best ability that I can, and to see why things are dysfunctional and where the root cause of that. So if society is validating this like empaths and saying like, oh, we're so good, and like we're such a victims of these narcissists, and they're just writing books about it, making videos, making documentaries, watching it all the time, guess what's going on? You are creating that because you're opening the mind to that, period. So you are the cause of it. You understand? Like if there's no mirror reflecting that, narcissism, then there's no narcissist. Narcissist cannot exist by itself in a vacuum unless there's an empath, a gullible fool. And what do these people do with their time? That's what they do. They open their minds for that corrupt reality to be created, and then they say that like, oh, I'm a victim. Why the world is like that? Because you're the one who's doing it. That's the answer. So that's that. Now, conversely, the other side, if a woman opens up to something that is correct, holistic, cohesive, coherent, then that's what's going to be created. This is why, like I said, a feminine responsibility is selective openness, is to close, and closing off, it is not creating, a sort of like a wall. That is not. It is basically like burning it off, that leakage of energy, burning it off. And I call it zeroing it out. You say no to that particular openness by zeroing it out. So the no is not emotional. No is not passionate, right? Because if you go like, no, that's so bad, so evil. Okay, that is emotional no or passionate no. The universe understands, yes, give me more of that. That's what the universe understands. Passion means yes, peace means no. So if you're still passionate, which is a dark passion about narcissist or all these people, tyrannical father figures, then you have to look at that in your imagination, does not matter, and rather than contributing that energy, you are zeroing it out. There's a specific calibration that you do, sometimes you can call it specific alchemy, to zero that out. And you can feel all this crap, all these emotions, all these thoughts, all these negative thoughts just going like, and now that image has no emotional connotation to you. Now you have said no, the true no. Now you do not leak the energy that way. You do not create something that is corrupt in this world. That's the responsibility of the feminine. Okay. Again, I'm just saying that not that men don't have to do this, because they do, but it's just that happens that women tend to need to do this more because they're dealing with the openness, and men tend to do dealing more with the, you know, like the projection, the energy flow, right? The mirror and the light, the mirror and the light. So the pattern is masculine, patron, right? The pattern, father. It is, and the mother, matter, mirror, is reflecting, right? So 80% of the time I've noticed that women get the responsibility about selective openness, and 20% of the time men get responsibility of selective openness. Don't quote me on these numbers. I'm just using Pareto principle, because that's the best thing that I can see in, but there might be different numbers. You understand? You see what I'm trying to say? I'm just using it an example. I don't have any proof. It's just my intuition. So, and then men tend to deal with selective, you can call it projection, or what would be the best word? Like, if projection, reflection, that works well, and then light and the mirror, okay, and selective openness, selective attention. No, it's not very. The openness, and then the, what is that word? The portal, and so basically it's a selective energy flow, right? That's the most of that work is for the man. You see what I'm trying to say? That's just end up being the case. So the feminine says, it's the feminine that says no, right? The shield, the ultimate void, is the ultimate no. It's what it says no. The feminine says ultimately no. The masculine says yes. The peace, the feminine, the passion, the masculine. Okay? So you want to be passionate about the things that you want more in your life. I call it light passion or white passion. And you got to remove the energy from the dark passions that you have towards the light passions. And everything out of the light passion is legit. And then if you see that there's still some dark passion in you, which would be like, anger, rage, or lust, or anything like that, that's your dark passion. You do the zeroing it out. And then once the energy has been taken from there, you're going to feel the arise of this new energy within you that you may call light passion. Because it's there just because you're not leaking the energy anymore. Okay, so that's pretty much like, in the essence, it's the work. The skepticism part is when the skepticism does not mean complete blockage to it, right? Like, for example, if you're too skeptic, you're just not going to investigate something. You're going to already have preconceived notion, the rigidness, and you're not going to investigate something. And so actually it's a type of cowardly approach to life. These skeptics that there's new information coming out about everything, about the archaeology, about the history, about everything, and some of that information is kind of challenging of course, the previous notion, and there's no even willingness to investigate, right? Like Richard Dawkins and Rupert Sheldrake. Rupert Sheldrake say, hey, what's up? Come here, look at the fucking data. No, I don't have to do this. Is bullshit, or this is bonkers. This is not real science. hey, maybe it's time for you to grow up a little bit and to see that the science itself is expanding, you see, and your old notion is not working. How about that, huh? That, well, being too skeptic, that's not being a real scientist, it's being dogmatic. That's what the skepticism, pure skepticism, is all about, right? But open-minded skepticism always treats the new information as an invitation for adventure, right? You don't make your mind up, and you keep that in such a sort of like a state that is sort of like, okay, there's this potential for investigation. I'm not settling it down into something of a certainty. I'm not starting navigate my life as if to be the case, or as if it's true, but I'm holding it. This is neither this, neither that. It is, I have to open that mystery box for me to see what it's there. And to be able to have like lots of different these things, which is like floating around and saying, well, these are all these mystery boxes that call for the adventure. That's my quest. For me to know that if this is really so, or it's just a bunch of nonsense. Right? And that's the healthiest approach in life in general. And a lot of it is to do with the emotions. This is why people who are cowardly, they don't face something new and break down something that is old. That's why they're so skeptical, And I don't know if Richard Dawkins ever is going to start, he needs to take pop some mushrooms or something like that to loosen up his boundaries, but not too much. Because you see, when people start abusing psychedelics, their boundaries are becoming loose too much and they're being too open-minded. And then they believe all sorts of nonsense, right? And that brings me into the world of the mind and the types of dreams that we have. Like, for example, this negative thinking, it is a dream. It is a type of dream. Like, you go through life and then it's like just these thoughts popping up and it's like, oh, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this, that person thinks like this about you. What do you think about this? It's like, okay, this is a dream, right? Because it's nothing happening in a physical reality. It's just the information flowing into through your mind. It's a type of dream. This negative thinking is a type of dream. Because mind can only dream. It cannot do anything else. It can dream. But presumably, there are 6 types of dreams. Why am I saying 6 types? Because consciousness seems to be folding 6 times. It's just basically through my observation. I've just seen it to be happening. It's folding 6 times, and every time it folds, it creates a new form of complexity. One of the experiences I had is when I smoked DMT, and I saw how everything is layer by layer is being created. It just was an interesting thing because, of course, this physical reality is also a dream, but it's more solid. It's already projected. It's already coming in. But DMT has the capacity for you to start seeing this reality as, it's being created. And the first thing that happened is the details went away, right? And then I was doing next to my friend, and then I started seeing that the textures went away, and now it's just like this, almost like pastel colors, and everything's just more like a bit of a kind of video game, like less detailed, less real. Then that went off. Now I started seeing that things are not as round anymore, and things that are more like square, and like these video games that are more pixelated. Everything started going like this, and the details of his head went from less, and then it was just like a cube where his head was. It's just like Minecraft, And so all of this been taken away, and eventually when it just takes away, then you just see it as a naked geometry just moving around, right? And at each level, that's what's going on. This level of complexity arises every time you fold the consciousness of the mind. Okay. So not to go too much into this stuff, just looking through your own experience, this is what you may notice. Sometimes you have dreams which are just the same kind of negative thinking that you have through the day. It's just that now that your body is asleep, the mind can make it into a more vivid picture, and it used to be just like a thought floating around. Now it has a little bit more of an image, but it's the exact same thing going on, because your mind is trying to make sense of the reality throughout the day, because you don't have the coherence within your heart. So mind is trying to compensate with that through this negative thinking or creating beliefs and say how to protect ourselves, because it believes there's something there to be protected, right? And that happens because you're not alchemizing, you're not calibrating your consciousness. But when you do calibrate your consciousness, there's this peace there in your mind, and these types of dreams don't happen. Then what may happen is that you may start having these like prophetic dreams, where you see something vividly and you experience this, and then sure enough, after like a week or two, you find yourself in a very similar situation doing the exact same thing, right? That is not the same type of dream. That is not this minor nightmare, or that has been born out of negative thinking. It's a not same type of dream. Okay. That is a totally legit, and that is a creative type of dreaming. So there's this coherent dreaming and then incoherent dreaming, and then there are levels to it. For example, if you are like really deep into it and everything is just geometry, and it's like like cymatics and stuff like that, and that's what you're seeing with your mind, you're basically watching your feelings, right? That's how you normally experience them. And it may be like jewels and gems, and everything is like Mandelbrot fractal zoom or whatever that may be. It's that layer of consciousness. But that may actually mean something quite literal or in the physical reality. That may mean some event in your life that you are just looking at it at the primordial state, which is that almost like a negative film of the hologram, right? When you look at the negative, you can't really make sense of what is there. It's just like a bunch of geometrical shapes and fractals moving around, right? But when the light shines through the lens into the projected screen, poof, now you can see what is there. It's like, oh, this is like, somebody's face or an event that's happening in your life. Okay? But the quality of that experience, that prophetic dream that comes in and you see it, comes in from the alchemy of your feelings. It's because these awesome feelings are there that it feels really good. It's projected fulfillment of that desire on your screen, and then it happens in your life. So you don't go into the mind unless you went through the heart, and you don't go into the body unless you went through the heart. This is what I've been saying today. The way I'm doing my discipline and the way I'm exercising, I'm making sure that it goes through the heart, means the energy first. The same thing in the mind. I don't go into the mind unless there's energy first, unless there's this background of these alchemized feelings, where you alchemize it into this prima materia, which is this Perlamuttra jewel. I don't know how else to say it. It's like it comes out of nothing, and it's always mysterious, and it's alive, and it's doing its thing in a perfect possible case. That's prima materia. That's your philosopher's stone. And when you create out of that, everything's going to be dope. Everything's going to be awesome. And that is in charge of the negative of your reality. The negative, not in the sense of incoherent, that bad, but in the sense of like photography. The negative is called the film through which you shine and you see something, right? But that's the negative of the holography. And in the holography, you may see there's a film, or I don't know how it's called actually, but you need the sheet of data, which is kind of 2D, right? Through which the light shines through the lens, scatters into the projector screen, and then now you see that that final picture. You need the mirror of that, you know. And so that's how consciousness works. So if you take care of the negative film, everything that's going to be projected on the screen is going to be dope. So you don't try to micromanage the screen. You try to try to manage the film from which it will come onto the screen. Which means, you know, like, and some people do this like last thing. They're so stuck into this thing, and then they you know, you're like, oh yeah, and you see like there's like a culture, right? Like it's like, oh, you know, Shmash Mishmenza. Oh, have you seen this? Like, this is how to create placebo. And everybody's running, and using their mind or their bodies to recreate that thing. Is like, okay, first of all, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, what are you fixing? Have you looked at that thing that asks you to do this, that it's supposed to be good for you? Have you looked at that thing? Because if you're going to start looking there, you're going to start discovering all the things that you know, have already, and all of this different external nonsense is going to fade away, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's not it. So all this help industry, self-help industry, just is gone. It's useless. You see? And what do you do with this reality that people are running there, and they are so not that much anymore, but like, what do you do with the people who are just like running in the wrong direction? If it affects your life, you discipline that. It's like, I don't let that happen in my life. If anybody just, you know, with my friends, for example, when they start babbling this, oh, this, I say, and immediately challenge them. I say, why the fuck are you doing this? What's it going to give you? What's going to give you some powers, you know, and the effect on the reality? What are you trying to fix? What are you going to get? This little pleasure? This experience? And then what? You're going to get another one? Have you looked at that part that is asking for you to do this? If you question that like 98% of everything is crap, just because this industry has been built, does not mean it's useful for anybody. The entire industry of self-help or the spiritualism is a satanic industry, because whether it's a minor evil or big evil, it's all evil. Evil, it is basically, it's the sin, it's a missing the mark. So if you are in my reality, you're going to be challenged like this. You're going to be reset. This is basically my choice, and this is my domain of reality, and no one's going to be able to get away with their crap in my reality. You're going to break down if you're going to try to do that. That's my choice. And I will always denounce the people who moving backwards. I'm not this type of like who likes to focus on them and then start making documentaries of how they're fucked up and whatever. No, that's just still not right. I just completely look at them. If they're pissing me off, I zero it out and I say no, like this, and I look at them, and whatever they do is that's still pissing me off. It's like, no, I'm chill about that. All right, then I said no, and that's where I leave. You know. So I think it's important to recognize that the backwards is backwards, that it's not helping you, but it's making it worse. It is very important to recognize that. You understand? So when somebody is engaged into this and you're saying like, hey, you're making your life worse, say, no, this is helping me because I get some relief from, suffering or whatever. I say, okay, it's like a drug. Yes, it does give you temporary relief, but builds up even more pain because that's just pleasure generated by the mind. You see? So you're just trying to get high because you don't want to face the low. Because the more high you are getting, the more low your consciousness is going to go. And so they may start recognizing this pattern and say like, oh yeah, this is what's going on. Like, yeah, I get really high, but then I crash and then I feel like shit. It's like, yeah. And then I go another one and another one. And it's like, I'm fucking addicted to this shit. And some people do realize that. It's hard because then it's like, what? Like, I've built my life around this. This is what I've been doing on a regular basis to keep my head afloat. And what is this? All not necessary anymore? What am I going to do with my time now? But you say like, okay, let's look at that. Let's look at that thing that we're running away from. And I help out to calibrate their consciousness. And when they start seeing this, like, oh, so if I just look at that incoherence rather than trying to pacify it, the coherence arises. And I don't have to do anything. It's just that my attention now is flowing in the right way. It's amazing. And sometimes it's not easy to do this because when you're doing this, life will give you more of this. Does that, you see, like, it's going to be like, okay, if you're good at alchemizing, next cycle of time, it's going to give you more. And then you're going to have to keep up. You're going to have to, like I had to drop a lot of habits because I could not keep up with this, increment that has been given to me. It's like, oh, so you've dealt with this pretty good now. Okay, have some more. That's what's going on with me. I don't know if that's happening with other people, but this is why I have to clean up my life so much more, and I cannot get away doing things that I used to be able to do. But there comes a point where it's just like, okay, this is it. Like, you are already handling the most that you can possibly handle. And then you're steady. And this is what I call stabilized prima materia, or the stabilized philosopher's stone. You can get to the point where it's stabilized because you're continuously working with the highest intensity of energies, and it remains stable. But the moment you're going to go into the pleasure again, it will crash. Okay? So no more seeking high, but being free. I think Ram Dass said something. And it's really cool. It was really cool of him. To me, he was a bit of he is what he was what he was like, but he did recognize after how many years he's been trying to get high. Then he started realizing and saying like, hey guys, I've been just getting high, but it was not about that. It was just about being free, not getting high. And he did recognize that, and towards the end of his life, I suppose, or when he was quite old. But you don't have to do that. Like, you can start off with not trying to get high, but being free by putting your attention where it belongs. Okay? So there's the world of the mind. It's fascinating. I do know that there are these layers, and that we ought to create things like layer by layer. First, we start off like with a desire, with the primordial desire is basically this peace and bliss. It's what all we want. And upon the alchemizing your incoherence, that peace and bliss will arise. Then we say, okay, we have peace and bliss now. What next? Your soul is gonna see like, well, I want to have this type of feeling, and it might be the feeling loved and be loved, or it's like I really want to have like this particular experience, this particular gem I want to experience. And so you start polishing that gem, which is theurgy, and making that feeling more and more crystalline and clear and clear and clear and more predominant in your life. And it's still at this point, it's just within you. It could be a relationship that you're already building, but you may not even know the person or whatever, but you're building that relationship because that's your soul desire, and the soul's like wants this type of thing. And like I said, just because you have peace, bliss, you keep your spirit at rest, your soul is not gonna be at rest. It's gonna see like, okay, now that we have that fuel of energy, now I want to create this, and it's gonna want to create this all sorts of like jewels and gems. That's what, by the way, like people talk about machine elves, like DMT machine elves. These are just souls. This is how the soul looks like before it comes into the world of the mind and the world of the body. It's pure geometry, and and so on and so on, organized geometry. So that's what you start to work on. You start working on your palace. It has this jewel here, this feeling, that feeling, that feeling, and that's my domain. This is how it feels to be me and in relationship with the people that I love and love me. So you already start building that, and then only then you bring the mind in and say, well, let's give it the form, and you start giving it the form. But then when you're imagining, it is already so vivid and so full of that energy, full of that light, these wonderful feelings, that you that's valid now. You can create, and everything's going to be cohesive because you're creating from holistic, from the whole perspective. Your hologram is complete because it's not fragmented. You see what I'm trying to say? You are doing it from prima materia, and unless you're doing it from prima materia, you're not doing anything at all. Now, other souls, for example, where there's smaller souls, and there are smaller souls, may not need to alchemize anything. They may just use somebody else's ink for their creation. Does that make sense? Like, and it's not invalid. It's just like, for example, the energy of the black hole and a neutron star activates the sun, right? So if the sun is activated and is doing all sorts of things, and it's stimulated by the energy of the black hole and neutron star, because that's where all the fuel comes from, the original fuel, then whatever the sun is doing in its creativity is completely valid and projecting whatever the reality it wants, and then it projects on the planet, and the planet is now it's like a screen, right? So you see those. Some people are planets, some people are stars, and some people are neutron stars, or those colossal centers of the cosmos and the galaxies. But the sun must be in relationship with this neutron star. You see what I'm trying to say? That's where it gets the primordial energy, and that's a valid relationship. You don't ask the star to be a neutron star in a black hole, right? You are asking too much of the being that it's not so. But the calibration, at that level of calibration, it exists. It exists on those three types of souls. Pneumatic, which is this alchemical soul, deals with the deepest fractals of time. Then you have psychic, which is deals with this more of a the world of the mind, the world of the astral world, and depending on what energy they subscribe to, if they subscribe to the source energy, and they essentially in the relationship with somebody who is an alchemist, then that's legit. They're going to be creating from source, even though they are not alchemizing source energies. They don't have to, but they will need to do some calibration at whatever their level are in order for them to even to connect with that source energy. Does that make sense? And the same thing with the people who are living in the 3D, just these hyelic, they call them. They also have some degree of responsibilities. They have like more basic emotions, but they do need calibration as well. So this works on everybody, but on a different level. That's why I do this consciousness calibration. It works on for everybody, and it's not asking for the psychic soul to be pneumatic. It's not asking for the hyelic soul to be psychic. Whatever is going on, it's legit. It's fine. We're all playing our own level of game. That's one of the things that I realized, for example, with people here in Mexico, and not just Mexico, but particularly here, like they're genetically predisposed for this, for something. And I was watching, it's like, what is this thing? Why this behaves like this? And it's like a lot of things don't make sense of why they behave, because this very self-sabotaging way, and and you can say like, well, the whole world is like this, and sure, but there's different types of symptoms in different people all over the world. But why they don't have this like self-authority, right? And it seems that authority comes from another type of gene. I'm just being real right here, right? And so if a person, for example, is native but mixed with somebody that's like European, then there is this capacity for self-authority. They're not completely subject to the energy. Otherwise, they're completely subject to the energy. So if the energy is kind of, rancid, they're going to be super rancid. They have no protection against this. I think this is like how they were ruled. But I know that Maya and Aztecs were ruled for the last 1,000 years in a corrupt way. It was through the dark magic, and it was not through the holistic approach, you see. That's how it was ruled. And so the people are very subjected to that, and they were very easily moved by that. But if you change the energy, then the people change too. But they don't have their self-authority. It's just the way it is. As to cope with that, they engage in stubbornness and become super rigid, which is just another way of coping with that negative energy, and actually doing what that negative energy is intending to do, and not having still self-authority. Okay, not real. That's what they realize. They just a lot of them are hyelic souls, and it's not that it's bad. You put them in a different environment and they're going to be good. You put them in a bad energy, they're going to be bad. It's just the way it is. And right now the energy is cleaning up over here, and so are all devices are being cleaned up. You clean up the energy and devices are being cleaned up. The people who cannot take to live in a clean place, they leave, and people who enjoy living in a cleaner place, they stay. But anyway, that's my little take about those 3 levels of souls. Okay, so open-minded skepticism. A lot of people who are teaching are actually scholars. They have not discovered anything throughout themselves. They just discover, it's like, well, I read it in a book, I tried it, it works, and if they use like the tricks of the mind, which is the hypnosis or magic, imagination, and all this, they try it, it works, and it's like, oh, this is the way, this is the power, and they just don't realize that the quality of their creation is going to be based on how calibrated is their energy. And of course, they do what makes sense. It's like, oh, I'm going to create this now, and then they create this thinking that that's going to fix things and just break even more things. Oh shit, we broke even more things. Now we have to do this. And then it's like, you see what I'm trying to say? And then that's how it ends up when you give this type of technology of magic to monkeys. Or the three letter authorities like CIA or FBI. You give them this tool and they recognize that that's, oh, you can control the reality through the images, through the astral. Let's control it, right? But not realizing that whatever they're gonna fucking do is gonna be at the quality of the level of their consciousness. And that's why they create things that are evil. Because you give this thing to a person who is just completely incoherent, fragmented, using this technology of consciousness, creating mess. So somebody has to come in and spank these motherfuckers, spank some sense into them. And honestly, because they're not going to stop doing this, you got to take their toys away. And that's what the alchemist is doing. It's taking away the energy. And this is why they're blocked out. Things are not working out. You see what I'm trying to say? It's been working, but they're getting surprised with it not. Because look, like, I mean, you can't fuck around like this. How long do you think you're gonna get away with this bullshit? Not for long. So all of these people who think that they're gods of this reality because you have imagination, there's gonna be another thing coming for them. Big lesson. So yeah, but if you come from the coherence, everything that you're going to create is going to be whole. It's going to be somehow bettering. Somehow it's going to be reducing corruption. Somehow is increasing coherence. That's what's going to happen. And even your soul desire is not going to be something, okay, I got what I wanted, but then I broke so many other things, hurt so many people, but at least I got what I wanted, right? No, you get what you want, and you don't upset souls. If your soul desire is completed, you upset the egos, and you make them follow their soul. So you're not gonna be able to just, you cannot please the egos, you cannot respect the egos. You have to be okay with them breaking down. I'm totally fine with that. This is my life's mission, by the way. Anyway, over 1 hour. Look at that. I'll make some more cafecito. I think we're done. I'm trying to make these videos a little bit shorter, but I always have 1 hour loaded. We'll see. Maybe I'll be able to make them shorter sometime. But that's the thing. Anything else? No, I think we covered everything that I got to say today. Open-minded skepticism is just a word to describe a right type of navigation of consciousness. It is about selective openness and selective movement, action, not the right word. Something deeper than the action, something deeper than the movement. I don't have a better word, but there's got to be a better word. Penetration. It's too sexy, but it is like that. It is moving the energy correctly, selectively. So that's the thing. And I mean, you apply this everywhere. And wherever you put your energy, that's what you're gonna come in. That's what's gonna come into reality. And so, one of the things to realize is that if you've been putting the energy in running away from yourself and doing this, and you had a success through this backward ass motion, Luciferian success through your imagination and magic, stuff like that, you have to understand that all of that is illusion. It's nonsense. It was just created as a placebo. It's not real. It's blah, 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 it's like, so when this is going to stop working, and it is stopping working right now, everything that you've created is just going to go away because you've done it all backwards and not knowing perhaps that you used the dark way. Once that is gone, once you're going to realize that the calibration and the energy that is a priority, and that you're not supposed to do anything from the incoherence in your heart. You have to address the incoherence. And once there is a coherence, which is love, by the way, then you'll see what the true desires are there, what your soul desires there, not an ego tantrum. Okay? And then you, as an ego tantrum, you may be, I see these women going the wrong way into this becoming basically like a tease for creeps, I'm trying to say. And I don't know, like, what the fuck? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what the fuck you're doing? And they say it's a success, and this is like, it's the thing. They know that this is just like the only thing that they've been told to be real. That's what they read from the, from the books, from Watch the People, and they're all Luciferian, and all of these people that they're successful are basically witches and warlocks trying to, compensate for the fact of incoherence with their hearts and doing all this kind of stuff. Like, that the whole fucking movement like that. And when this fool's gold becomes apparent and realize, oh my God, this is all empty. Doesn't have any. This is actually feels like shit. Oh, my success feels like shit. Well, then that's gonna go away. And after I don't know, strong internal process, because that when you break down that incoherence, it is very strong process. It's a type of death, but this is real death. It is not this devouring mother death. It's the death in the void, that part of you that is dying in the void. Because your mind and body is dying in that devouring mother. Because the mind and body is supposed to be very active, very passionate, very, that's very alive, affirming. And that happens when that your ego is dying in the void, because the soul is dying in the devouring mother, and the ego is dying in the divine mother. You see? What I'm saying is, almost in every video, I'm just pointing out that, like, the motion that people are doing is backwards, and they considering that subset. Like, to me, this is a crucial mistake to make. And I would like to see, and people are sort of like almost like keeping up a little bit now, and they start seeing, like, then starting denouncing this thing, at least saying no, saying no, because when you say first time you say no, you may have a lot of anger, and it's like, I've been tricked, I've been tricked into this culture, into this witch culture, into this warlock culture. I thought that this is the way. I've been brainwashed that it is right. I called myself witch. I made all these fucking tattoos, and did all this, wasted all this money on this nonsense and trinkets and doing my fucking magic, when all I had to do is just face that thing that needs fixing. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the power in the matrix, when it's being taken away, things stops working, and then the power in the holistic starts rising. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you take the energy from the matrix, because if you've always been trying to create backwards in the matrix, and now you take that energy from it, you're going to little by little start creating something with the soul. But there is a bit of a bottleneck that's going on, that is asking you a lot of alchemy within yourself, like saying that, okay, you got to alchemize everything. And then the success starts happening through the soul. And the people who are still stuck in the ego and they're still stubborn there, their success is crumbling. And because you're moving now through a different thing, your success is going to be quite sparkling. It comes as a miracle. And you can see that like your world and your economy is shining and sparkling and it's working and it's alive. And then you see this another world is dying and they're struggling and and it's lack and problems and all that stuff, but your world is pure and shining. And it's setting an example for them to give up on their ego and join the world of the soul. And the whole movie industry is going to come back alive. Music industry is going to come back alive, everything, but it's going to come back alive as a soul. It's not going to be run by Jews anymore. It's not going to be run by anybody. It's just going to be from the consumer, from P2P basically, from the artist to the consumer. And platforms like Web 3.0 platforms, decentralized platforms and protocols that we all agree upon of how it all works, that's what's going to be. And the value exchange is going to be there. And this is the world, in a technological world, that moves from the soul. And it's delicious. Isn't it amazing? What amazes me is that just now I'm learning of how to live this life. And there's part of me just is so flabbergasted with this reality. It's like, what? So backwards. But this part of me doesn't want to believe. It's like, no, there has to be some level, value there. And then there's this, fuck, there's no value there. I said, no, there has to be some. I said, yeah. No. Like the only, like value is any kind of physical skills that you learn that perhaps still usable. But even those you have to relearn, do the same motion through the use of energy and not force. Even those you have to relearn. And it really is like the other side. It really is like the other side. While you're still here, you're in an entirely different world. And you can help other people to calibrate their consciousness, and they join this world and they start seeing things like that. You see, and I see people like joining this world, for example, and some of them they're staying, and it's like the matrix is going to try to pull you back, and challenge you. There's a lot of my friends after this one-on-one session, they've been challenged and they've tried to be pulled back into the matrix, and I pointed to them as like, this is what's going on, and they did something that like, fuck, it's like, you're gonna have to now come clean with this. It's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be fucking brutal, but you have to come clean because like, if you don't come clean with this, then you're gonna be stuck in the matrix. Your energy is not gonna be clean, and you won't be able to, have what you want to have. That purity is not gonna be there because you gotta come clean. And it was brutal and it was difficult, but it did work out, and they came back in, and it was awesome. I saw them do something that I wasn't able to do because I was doing it. I didn't know exactly what I'm doing it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and so in the end, for me it didn't. But for them, it is working. And maybe what I'm trying to say. Like, I just like to see people generally succeed and move from the soul. That type of success really makes me happy. And to see the people succeeding from the ego, that makes me sad. And then other people I see, like they come in this world, this energy. I show them, and they are swept back into the matrix. And I could even tell them, it's like, hey, you know, you can be a real princess, not like this hoe that's calling yourself princess, right? But a real one. But what, you choose to be the hoe? And then I see them later and they're all fucking drained, and they're being sucked dry, their energy sucked dry by some fucking crook and a schmuck who's just abusing them and whatever. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, you know, you know. So it doesn't work on for everybody. Everybody who's going to be calibrated to this, the mage is gonna try to pull you back in. You're gonna have to calibrate your consciousness yourself. You're gonna fuck up. You're gonna wake up and you realize that you fucked up. You're gonna have to, come back, come clean, and that type of learning to live holistically may be a bumpy ride, This is why it's so important to stick with the friends who are already living like that. That's the best advice that I can give. Is stick with that kind of people. Don't depend on them, but they're gonna give you clarity when you're losing yourself. You see, because this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna be pulled in. You're gonna justify, oh, this is okay. This is just part of this. Like, I just belong to the group of people. Everybody's doing that. So some of this is okay, isn't it? So this is just being a human. And then like, what? This is being a human? Like, again, I'm not judging. I've been through all of this, but I know what's the way out. And this normalization of this darkness, of this Luciferian waves, like, oh yeah, like OnlyFans, and there's hoes, and then this, and they make money like this, and gooning and fapping and porn and this shit. Is like, no, this is horrible. This is not normal. This is heavily dysfunctional. You don't belong to anything of value, and you're being a degenerate. You may not want to hear that. Again, I'm not judging, because like I said, like, I've been through all of this. And to get out of that lust and wrath was very difficult. And now at the point where it's still maybe trying to get a hold of me, but it does not have a grasp on me anymore. Does that make sense? I have just way too much space in me right now. And my weakest point was the discipline, and kind of very loose discipline that appeared after taking too many psychedelics and smoking too much weed. Once that has been resolved, my discipline is coming back, and so now I don't have weak points. Or if I'm going to recognize there's another weak point, I'm going to patch that up. And again, it's not easy because if you dependent on a psychedelic or weed, which is a type of psychedelic as well, then it's gonna be a lot of chemical challenges, a lot of conscious calibration for you to compensate for that thing that is no longer part of your life, because you're gonna have to now pick up your own slack and not borrow it from a weed or psychedelic. Okay. When it comes to physical body, because this is obviously mind altering and soul altering drugs, but when it comes to physical body, if supplements, it's legit. Like, sometimes people criticize peptides. When people have no soul and they just think that everything can be resolved with peptides, then okay, that's just a bit too much. And just like you have people who are becoming a bit of like a vampire looking people just get obsessed about this. But some of these peptides are great. They really help your body. Some of these supplements are great. They really help your body. So anything that's physical, to support your physical body is totally legit. Like I have nothing against it. But of course, there is as well, it shouldn't be an abuse. But with this, the quality of your soul now has to be completely your attention and no assistance anymore. Okay? Body is, by the way, the only thing that should be assisted. Avatar is the only ego, but you can't really call the ego anymore. But it functions like ego. It seeks the solution, and it's legit in the physical reality. This is legit. There's something, physical desire to have something, to do something. There's a seeking, there's an accomplishment, perfectly fine and legit, just in the physical. But psychologically, you don't have anything to resolve anymore. Does that make sense? This is something that it needs to be recognized, that in the physical reality, in that layer of the reality, seeking is fine. Not only fine, it is necessary. Okay? This is how your brain works. It is setting a goal, accomplishing, getting a reward. Then there's another goal, another desire, desire, physical desire, seeking a goal, accomplishing, right? That's what makes you move into the physical reality. It's perfectly fun, perfectly legit. So, again, I'm separating the temporal freaking movement and how it all works, and the infinite and how it all works. And they both work the opposite, but they collaborative. The ghost and the machine. Okay, you got to treat the machine as a machine. You cannot ask for the machine to become a ghost or compensate for the ghost. The spirit, And you cannot ask the ghost or the spirit to compensate for the machine either, because that's stupid. Okay? So there. Take care of your machine, which is your brain and the body. Train it. Reward it. Every time task is accomplished, have a reward for it. Like this week, I've been doing a lot of exercising, a lot of judo. I'm going to reward my body with some massage for doing a good job. Everything where it belongs. I don't know what else to tell you guys, but this is the thing. We're going to have to end this here. Peace, and I'll see you in the next one.